And now you all know that we were supposed to have this last Monday night, and it got pushed off to this Monday night. So here's what I want to tell you. Nothing in life gets pushed off. Things only get pushed on. We think they're getting pushed off because they're getting pushed off of our schedule, but they're actually getting pushed onto the schedule. That's what happens. And lo and behold, it gets pushed off to tonight, and tonight is actually a very significant night for me, for the Chabad community, and for the entire Jewish world, because tonight and tomorrow, the 11th day of the month of Nisan, is the birthday of one of the greatest Jewish leaders of all time, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And if there's one person who I draw 95% of my inspiration from, it is from the Rebbe. When my father took me as a little boy for the first time to see the Rebbe in a big assemblage, it made an impression on my soul, I would say, that never left me. And from there, I've been able to draw more conscious inspiration from the Rebbe. And in fact, I'm very glad that the very beginning of our book, the preface, begins with a quote from the Rebbe, which tells us that when the soul is starved for nourishment, it lets us know with feelings of emptiness, anxiety, or yearning. Whenever we have those feelings, it's because we have a soul deep within us that is yearning to express itself. And when we don't give it an avenue to express itself, we begin experiencing anxiety, emptiness, anxiety, and yearning. That's exactly what happens. I want to say one thing I'd like to share with everyone, and that is that throughout my entire process of not only writing the book, but starting a podcast, I had a lot of fear as I was doing it. A lot of fear because I was sticking my head out, I was saying things, I was being vocal, I was opening myself up to a much more public arena, not just this room, but now being broadcast to many others. And there was a lot of fear to that. Writing the book, I had a lot of fear. How are people going to respond to the book? But I made a decision, and the decision was that these are ideas that I truly believe in. And if I truly believe in them, then I'm going to own them, and I'm going to put them out there. And that didn't take away the fear. That didn't take away the fear. Over time, the fear does diminish, but it didn't take it away. But I decided I'm going to do it anyway. And I want to say this, some of you heard me say this in the past. The difference between the person who does and the person who doesn't, 98% of the time is not that the person who does is more talented. It's only one thing. It's that the person who does chose to do. That is the whole difference. It's very difficult when we're sitting in a room like this for us to stand up and stick our head above the crowd. But God expects every single one of us to do that with what He gave us. And it's fearful for everyone who does it. Anyone who tells you it's not fearful is lying to you. You know, it looks easy. We all have a front. But it's not easy. So don't think it was easy for them. It's not going to be easy for you. And we all have the moral duty and obligation to stand up, pick our heads up, and whatever it is that God gave us, we have to bring it and let it shine. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the book and what the book is about, and I'm going to try and sum it up. And I also want to mention that I know a lot of you are waiting online for a long time, and I apologize. I only write so fast. But right when we're done with the talk, I'm going to be continuing to sign the books. As late as you'd like to stay, I'll be here. And if for any reason I don't get a chance to sign your book, you stop in here any day. It'd be better if you email me first to make sure I'm here. But just stop in any day, and I'll be happy to sign books for you. If I had to capture what the book is about, it's about getting to the very root of all of the struggles that we have. And this is not an idea that I invented. This is an idea I've been studying since I'm about 17 years old in Hasidic philosophy. Hasidic philosophy, as some of you know, because you've afforded yourselves in coming to some of our more intense classes, is extremely deep and sophisticated and profound and enlightening and relevant. And this entire book is an outcome of Hasidic philosophy. I did not study philosophy in college, and I do not have a degree in psychology. This is all directly from Hasidic philosophy. And it teaches us that all of our problems come from one root problem. And it's so powerful when we can acknowledge it. And I made a tremendous effort in this book to demonstrate this issue in a very concrete and relevant way, to show how it shows up and plays out in our day-to-day life, and what the antidote to it is. And I put exercises at the end of every single chapter so you have a path. You can actually do exercises and experience change in your life. Instead of just talking about ideas, which are very easy to do, but how do I translate this idea into my life? Here's the exercise. Do this every day this week. You will be a different person. You only need to choose to be one of those people who's going to do it. And I will tell you that most people choose not to. It's not pleasant to take our lives seriously, but it's unbelievably illuminating and transformative when we do. And surprisingly, the fundamental challenge that we all have, because God designs us this way, it's no one's fault, God designs us this way, but God wants us then to overcome it, is that we stumble over ourselves. We stumble over ourselves. We are far too much the center of everything going on in our life. Even those of us who would not consider ourselves to be arrogant, when you read the book, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. We stumble over ourselves when we realize that this is not my life. This is a life that was endowed to me for a purpose. And so no longer am I consumed with myself, but I'm consumed with my responsibility. So many of our problems immediately begin to disappear. I'll give you a very simple example. A young man, he was about 26 years old from South Africa, who I had met. He was studying in New York City. He called me up, and he says, maybe you can give me some advice. I said, what's going on? And he says, I'm going on a date with a girl tonight. He's dated a number of girls, and this is just another girl that he was not going to go on a date with. I said, so what's going on? So he said he's very anxious. I said, what are you anxious about? As if I'm surprised that he's anxious, right? Of course he's anxious because he's going on a date with a girl. But I wanted to bring out from him why he's anxious. And he said, I'm anxious because I'm concerned about how this girl is going to like me. You know, is she going to like me or not? I said, that's very normal. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you think the girl is anxious? Do you think she's going to be anxious? He says, I'm sure she's going to be very anxious about whether I'm going to like her. I said, fantastic. Let me give you a suggestion. Stop thinking about whether she's going to like you and realize that she is very anxious about whether you're going to like her. You're about to go on a date with a girl who's going to be very uncomfortable. Do everything you can do to make her comfortable. Don't take your mind off the fact that she's uncomfortable, and do everything you can do to make her comfortable. And I said, when you do that, two unbelievable things are going to happen. Number one, you're not going to be thinking about your own anxiety. Your anxiety is going to drop drastically. And number two, you are going to be the best date this girl ever had. Because all she wants is a guy who can stop thinking about himself and for a few minutes think about her. And she will have finally met the guy. And guess what? That's how relationships work. When we get ourselves out of the way, we make it possible for someone else to be there. When we are consuming the space with ourselves, there is no room for anyone else. We're a misery to be with. Our anxiety drops, and we can be there for another person. It's one thing that does two things. It gets us out of the way so we feel better, And it makes us present for another person, and they have a completely different experience. Right? We all know what happens when we look at a picture, a family picture. Right? There may be 3 people, 5 people, 8 people, 10 people. Right? Wow, look at this picture from 10 years ago. Who's the first person you look at? We're looking at how we looked, what we were wearing, because this is our nature, this is our tendency. And when we learn to do take small steps to slowly change this, we actually eliminate so many of the challenges that we have in our own lives. The tools are in our own hands. We only have to be willing to take them on and to do them. You ever get praised for doing a fantastic job? How do you feel? Elevated. Because when our value is dependent on other people, then other people hold the reins to how we're feeling. When we're criticized, we're deflated. That is because when you say something to me, I listen to what that says about me. Imagine if when you said something to me, I asked myself what that says about you. Wow, something must really be disturbing this guy. He's really angry today and he said something really nasty to me. Consumed about you, not consumed about me. Suddenly I'm not insulted. I don't get deflated. And I can actually be there to try and help you with whatever you're going through. It's a world of a difference. And every single one of us has the opportunity to approach life differently. And we approach life differently when we realize that our lives are not about us. We were put here for a mission. And this is the reason why when we hear religious people speak about God, and belief in God, and they sound like these out-of-touch people. And I've heard people like this too. They really do sound like out-of-touch people. But when we begin to realize that we, as creations of God, we're put here for a purpose, and how that changes all of the struggles that we suffer from on a daily basis, we begin to realize that this is not some pie-in-the-sky religious stuff. It actually changes every single experience we have in life. And that's a choice of perspective. Are we willing to embrace this perspective and be happy? Or are we unwilling to embrace this perspective and be miserable? And again, the exercises will demonstrate it to you. You will actually experience it through the exercises yourself. Just by doing these exercises, you will begin to experience that when I think less about myself, when I realize I'm in this moment for a purpose, to serve another person, when I'm aware of the fact that it's not my life, that I'm not going to go through every day of my life asking the world demanding from the world what my rights are. But I'm going to wake up every single day and ask myself what my obligations are. What is being expected of me? We wake up completely differently. Just think about it. Think about a guy who wakes up asking what he deserves. Right? He's already angry at the world. Because you're never going to get all of the things you think you deserve. And the person wakes up and he says, what do I need to do today? He jumps out of bed like a lion. Snooze. Who has time for snooze? You have to get out of bed. You have a lot of things to do. It's a whole different life. When I interact with another person, am I consumed with me or am I consumed with you? It's a whole different relationship. We all know that the people we really love most are the people who we interact with, and they can listen to us. They can feel for us. They can care about us. Well, guess what? The world needs us to be that to the world. And the only way we become that person is when we practice it little by little every single day. Will we be perfect at this? Never. You have my guarantee. Okay? I will promise you anything. You will never be perfect at this. It takes 2.5 lifetimes, and then maybe one will become perfect at it. But God doesn't want perfect people. He has angels who just follow orders. He created humans with an evil inclination for a reason. He wants us to be better today than we were yesterday. And the way we become better is by realizing who our true self is. And it's not the self that we create. It's a self that was given to us. We don't need to get a certain degree to gain value. We don't need to make a certain amount of money to gain value. We don't need a certain position or power to gain value. Our value is within us. We only need to be willing to acknowledge it and stop trying to pander to the world outside of us. As long as we pander to the world outside of us, we will be a victim of the world. There will always be people who are not going to be happy. There are always going to be people who are going to say you're not good enough. And you're going to try and make yourself better and better and better, and it's endless. We are good enough because God made me. And I am exactly who God wants me to be. I just need to bring it out and live the life that God created me for. I'm a Jew. What does that mean? Why did God create Jews? What does He want from a Jew? I'm a Gentile. What does that mean? What does God want from a Gentile? We all need to be who we are. It's that simple. And we have to stop trying to accommodate the trends and societies that put all of these different demands on us for all of the different agendas that come up. And suddenly we discover that we let go and we're happy. All we need to do is accept and let go, and all of a sudden things are fine. So you are not responding the way I want you to. I can yell and scream about that, or I can accept it. One of them gets me really excited. One of them keeps me really calm. Every single one of us in this room knows people that we've had or we have a relationship with who we've been trying to demand change from, and they're still doing the exact same thing. But that's not the joke. The joke is on us. We're doing the exact same thing. And according to Einstein, we're insane. Because insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. When we become refined people and our lives are less about ourselves, people turn to us more and more because our influence grows. And when our influence grows, we no longer need to use power to change people because people are willing to listen to us. And the reason why people are willing to listen to us is for one reason. Because when we speak to other people, we don't speak with an agenda about ourselves. We begin to speak to them about them. We actually care about another person. And that's all we want. We all want someone who genuinely cares about us. And that's what makes all of the change. So here's the big irony. The big irony is that the more we assert ourselves in this world, the more dependent we are on the environment around us. I give the example of, it's probably in the book. I give the example of, some guy, I use an example of a lawyer, right? Because, you climb the ladder, you become partner, you become senior partner in some major corporate law firm in the city, and you finally get the corner office on the 88th floor, mahogany, whatever, all glass windows, fantastic, right? You made it in life. And this guy's sitting in his office, and someone's coming in to see him for some issue that they have. And this client walks into the, secretary says, where is this client is coming into your office, very good, let her in. She comes in, and this lawyer sitting on his desk with his feet up on the desk, reading the newspaper, completely ignores the client for a couple of minutes, and then puts down the paper. How can I help you? Right? You know what's going on in that story? What's going on in that story is something fascinating. It's a person who is really talented, is very capable, has achieved a tremendous place in life through very hard work, and they still have to show someone who is not contesting in any way, shape, or form their position and power. In fact, they're ready to pay a lot of money to meet them. and they still feel the need to show them, I am above you. And that's because when our value comes from external places, when we need other people to acknowledge us, when we need that office to know that we are worthy, then we're in a very unhealthy place, and we continuously depend on what other people are going to say about us. The moment we let go, and we just say, I don't need to prove myself to the world, I just need to take what God has given me and use it in the best way possible. What happens? We have just dropped all of that pressure, all of that anxiety, all of that tension, all of that aggravation. And something else happens. We become humble. We ask ourselves, what is the right thing for me to do? And that's what I do. And guess what? Big misconception. Humble people are very powerful. You see, arrogant people, it's very easy to tick them off. Did you ever notice that? They're so sensitive to what everyone has to say or think about them that all you need to do is say the right line and they explode. Humble person doesn't faze them. I let go of that a long time ago. What did you say? Interesting. Either it's true and I take that into consideration, or it's not true and I let it go. No big deal. But here's another thing. When a cause comes up, when a purpose comes up that's important to pursue, the humble person is not intimidated by what everyone else has to think. That person stands up and does what he needs to do. Right? Just imagine if in Washington, D.C., politicians didn't need votes for a day. Right? Maybe they would do different things. And when we see a politician who needs votes and still does the right thing, you're dealing with a high-quality person. And they are probably a very humble person because it's not about them. And this is the essence of what God wants from every single one of us. There's a reason why God tells us that we follow the lunar cycle. There's a reason why Hanukkah jumps back and forth every few years. And there's a reason why Passover is beginning April 19th this year, and next year it's probably going to be a week earlier. Because we follow the lunar cycle. You know why God wants us to follow the lunar cycle? Because the moon reflects the light of the sun. The moon doesn't show up and say, hey, here's my light, look at me. It's not what the moon says, because the moon doesn't have light. The moon gets out of the way so that the light of God can shine, reflects the light of the sun. That's what we are supposed to do. Reflect the light of God, reflect the light of other people, not dominate the room with our arrogant presence. And all we need to do is practice this bit by bit by bit. And you will absolutely see transformation in all of your interactions in life. So many people are very intimidated by this, and the first question that they ask me is, so what do you mean? I can't do anything for myself now? My whole life has to be selfless? And that's the reason why I put up this poster. Because it's not a question ever of what we're doing. It's a question of why we're doing what we're doing. This thing that you're doing is about who? Is it all about you, or is it about a greater purpose? Selfish isn't doing something for yourself. You better be doing things for yourself. You better go to sleep every night for yourself, and you better eat for yourself, and you better exercise for yourself, and do all of the different needs that we need to do for ourselves. It's making what you do all about yourself. That is when something that we are doing for ourselves becomes selfish. When we start making it about ourselves. This is a very important distinction. We must do things for ourselves. But we must not do things and make them about ourselves. And there's another point that that a lot of people raise. And the other point that a lot of people raise is, in today's society, you go onto Facebook and all of the modern trends, and people are fighting, this is my life, and I'm going to live my life. I'm not going to let my family stop me from living my life. I have the right to spend time the way I want to spend. And what we're actually doing is being counterproductive because we're becoming entrenched in ourselves. Sure, we have to do things for ourselves, but we have to make sure it's not about ourselves. And the second point is, which is also a very common word that's used very much nowadays, about being transparent. So you know how people are transparent nowadays? They go on Facebook and they let you know that they had eggs for breakfast. So transparent. Wow. You shared. You were so bold and honest to let us know, what you had for breakfast today. All right? Or someone just got into a fight with their spouse and they put on Facebook, my husband just told me this and this, or my wife just said this and this. How should I react? Being transparent, letting the whole world know what's going on in my life. Which is the reason why we're lacking intimacy nowadays. Because transparency is not about spilling every detail of your life into the public arena. This is what transparency actually is. Transparency doesn't require exposing yourself. It actually requires eliminating yourself. Transparency means, think of a window. A glass window is transparent. It lets the light shine right through it. By eliminating your self-interest and bias, you can show up unconditionally. When I get myself out of the way while you're talking to me, I can actually listen to you. When I get myself out of the way when you say something, and instead of assessing what you just said means about me, and I'm asking what you just said is expressing about yourself, I am being a transparent person. But which one do you think is easier? It's much easier to let the world know that I just got into a fight with my spouse than it is to actually do something about it. It's much easier to let the world know what's going on in my private life than actually learn how to be a more selfless person. And this is what differentiates, as they say, the men from the boys. It's when we are willing to go on the journey of truly transforming ourselves so that our self is no longer about myself. And that I am transparent to the purpose I was put here for. And then our lives become meaningful. We don't have the aggravation that we have. We don't deal with jealousy. We don't get angry. We do not get insulted. We don't even get a false high from big compliments that someone may give us. Because my value comes from within. And I don't depend on the world around me or the people around me to get it. And I'm going to leave you with one very simple way of practicing transparency and practicing more selflessness. Every single time we choose to make a situation less about ourselves, even in my minutiae less, we are changing. And every single time we don't do that, but we permit ourselves to be aware that in that moment I was so self-consumed that I made the whole situation about myself, we are slowly changing ourselves. And here's the thing. We sometimes wonder why God gave us 613 commandments. Right? Like Tevye says in Fiddler on the Roof, can't you choose someone else once in a while? Right? God gives us 613 opportunities, exercises, and practices not to be selfish, but to do something for God. That's what the opportunity is. So many of us are going to find ourselves in a lot of different places this Friday night. Hopefully, for many of us, we're going to be at a Passover Seder. But maybe you'll find yourself somewhere else, or maybe you're going to find yourself at home. And maybe your kids are going to look at you like you're strange. But when you pull out matzah, and you eat matzah, if you're in Bucks County after 8:11 p.m., when it's nightfall, you're doing something selfless because you're saying that I'm going to do something that's not about me. That's really what matzah is in large part about. Matzah represents selflessness. Bread is bloated, matzah's flat. Passover is an 8-day workshop. It's an 8-day workshop on becoming more selfless people and acknowledging that there is a greater presence to this world that put me here for a reason. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. Ready for a heavy challenge? For For some of you, it may not be a challenge at all, and for others, it may be a bigger challenge. And that challenge is to get yourself to go for 8 days without eating bread and only eating matzah. And it's going to be hard. Not so hard for some of us, right? My stomach is already bracing for it. But you know what it really is doing? It is reminding us every single time we're going to want a piece of bread and we eat the matzah, it's reminding us that this is not my life. And you will see how this is going to trickle into so many areas of your life. And it's going to take away so much of the frustration and aggravation that we suffer from every day. This is all a synopsis. If you read the book, I have no doubt, full money back guarantee, $16.99 returned, that I have no doubt, truly no doubt, the book is very simple reading, it's very grounded, very practical examples, and it gives you exercises to explain on a very basic psychological level why being selfless is the way to go, why acknowledging that God put me here transforms my life entirely. And I just want to leave you with this. We were put here by God with a mission. You have an obligation. God is waiting for you and for me to stand up. We cannot push this off any longer. We need to create a selfless revolution. And the selfless revolution happens one person at a time. I promise you, I never had any idea, any notion of writing this type of a book, ever. But I started things, and the ball started rolling. And even people started asking me, well, you're doing this book, what's your goal with this book? And you know what my answer was? I have no idea. But I have an opportunity to write a book. I have no idea how many people are going to read it, and what change it will or won't make, how many people are going to love or hate me for it. But it's an opportunity, and it's going to lead to another opportunity, which will lead to another opportunity. And I'm seeing this, and I'm sure many of us have seen this in our lives. We have to keep pushing the ball. We have to be selfless people, dedicated to the reason God endowed us with our gifts, dedicated to the reason that God designed me as who I am, and we do it just one step at a time. We don't get ahead of ourselves, one step at a time, and you will see unbelievable things happen. We can either go through our life like this, or we can go through our life like this. It's our choice. They say when speakers speak, you can tell speakers who spread out their arms more often, the audience is much more receptive to them. You know why? Because when you spread out your arms, you show vulnerability and openness. When we go like this, and you can notice this when you speak to people, when you go like this, which I sometimes do, right? It shows that we're very closed. And that's my point. We can go through life like this. I'm closed. I just want to protect everything I have. I don't want anything to shake or rattle my situation. And then there are people who open themselves up. And when we open ourselves up and we realize that this is God's life that He endowed me with, there's so little to fear. There is so little. The things that used to hurt you will not hurt you. It's astounding. It's just so beautiful to see. And from the few situations that I've experienced it in, because I'm as distant from perfect as everyone else is in this room. But thank God in going through this work, I've been able to see these slight improvements where I can see people telling me things that would have crushed me for days, which do not bother me. People who praise me, which would have elevated me, and then I would have crashed. And I just thank them because I appreciate that. And I look at what that offers to me, but it doesn't elevate me to this false place of arrogance. And how I can interact and serve other people in so much better of a way because I'm less self-consumed. This is not something that belongs to anyone in this room. It belongs to everyone in this room. We have an obligation. We have to own it. We have to live it.